And we're live. Well, thanks for coming on the show, Chris. Today I have with me Chris Manley, who's the CEO of Engenius. They're a web design, web development, and marketing shop, if I remember correctly. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on the show and being willing to let me ask you some questions.
Yeah. Thanks, David, for having me.
So I always start with this question, but what was it that originally inspired you to start Ingenious? And has that motivation evolved or changed as you've grown?
Yeah. The motivation to start Ingenius really came out of this. Some people might call it a utopian kind of thought process, but really was the desire to create a business that cared first and foremost about its people. Second, really cared about its customers, and third, in addition to just being a really good business, really cared about the community around it and improving the community and making it a great place for everybody. And you'll notice that none of that has to do with marketing. Um, but marketing is something that I had a little bit of a background in. I self-taught myself HTML. Um, Late '90s. Started selling web pages because they were one page at the time.
Yeah.
Uh, I remember when we could start changing the background more than just a solid color. They had that tile effect that actually like helped it load, in short of a minute, but allowed you to have some kind of gradient in the background. That was a really cool feature. But I designed websites for local small businesses through high school. Of course, back then, getting $100 to build a website. I mean, for a freshman in high school, $100 was a ton of money. So that's kind of how I got my start in this. But really, it was meeting somebody else in college that had a similar passion. Really believed that companies could serve a higher purpose. And I mean, we grew up in the age of things like Enron, and so I mean that's what we saw as corporate America.
Yeah.
And we saw a way to do things a little bit different, where we took care of our people. Really, we made decisions about what is going to make the best environment for people long term. And that's what our desire was. And so we started a company out of that.
That's awesome. Well, we'll probably get into more questions around that as we move on. So
Sure.
I want to move to another question,
Yeah.
but I'm sure we'll circle back around to that. As far as like what your agency does, would you say that there's any one like single zone of genius where it's like this is what we do best, um, and that maybe like drives the sort of business development you're doing and the types of clients you're trying to attract?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's really I find mostly unique about our agency. I don't see a whole lot of other agencies doing this. Is really our long term commitment to small businesses. That's where our passion is. That's where our heart is. And it's not a stepping stone to larger projects. It's not something to help us get our feet wet. We started serving small businesses. I mean, that was our very first client, and have continued that. We now serve about 180 small businesses, and we absolutely love bringing a level of expertise to them, but also with an understanding that they're not going to have, high six-figure, low seven-figure marketing budgets. They're not able to do these massive projects, but they still need a level of expertise. They still need systems that can help them identify who is your audience, what are you really trying to convey to them, and more important than anything, I think, is just that outside perspective that we're able to bring to our clients, where it's not they're busy trying to figure out how to run the company day to day, how to make the thing,
Mhm.
or certain provide the service. They're thinking about staffing and finance and everything else. They need somebody to kind of think from the outside, really putting themselves in their customer shoes, figuring out, hey, how do we make this attractive to your potential customers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and you have the benefit of because you work with multiple clients that are also small businesses, you can tell them, "Hey, this is working for, across many different types of small businesses. This is why we're recommending this, collection of marketing activities for you."
Exactly.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's the classic benefit of an agency is you're learning from what they're doing with other people.
Oh yeah.
Well, I guess backing up a little bit, you had to get your first client somehow. You mentioned doing like little websites here and there, for $100 and things like that. But maybe when thinking back to like the first real like agency client for Engenius in particular, what did that look like? How did you bring them in, and has that changed or evolved over the years?
Yeah. So yes and no. Our very first client, we signed our first client. I think it was exactly 10 days after filing the paperwork with our Secretary of State to actually like open the business, created the LLC, all that kind of fun jazz. And we're very fortunate. We had a client that came on board pretty quickly. It's somebody that we knew from association. We had a good friend. They had somebody that they knew was running a small nonprofit foundation at the time,
Mhm.
and they really had struggled in figuring out, how do we get the word out about what we're doing? How do we really position ourselves well? How do we articulate what we're doing in a way that actually motivates people to give, beyond just saying what they're excited about? How do you get the donors excited about
Mhm.
this thing? And so we worked with them to build a fairly simple website, but it was more taking that outside perspective and kind of thinking what would lead us to support this organization and what they're doing. Um, and so that was our very first client. We actually got several clients within the first month of business, all starting with building their websites. And each of those clients we found through both existing connections that we had and putting ourselves out there in the community and telling people this is what we're doing.
Mhm.
This is our goal. This is what we can help you with. If that's something of interest, have a chat with us. We're not going to try to hard sell you. I don't believe in that. That's not really our MO. If we can't help you, we're going to try to help you find somebody else that can, even if we're not making any money from that. And that's really what got us started back in 2008, and that continues to be the way that we sell today, even with a lot of other people involved in that process.
Yeah. I mean, I think that especially if you're selling like B2B services, like that's the way to go. It's relationships, in person when you can, but virtual if you need to, and just yeah, like you said, the hard sell, like no, or no hard selling, more of like here's what we can do. We'll kind of unpack a little bit about what we could do for you. But if we can't help you, then we can introduce you to other people who could, that sort of thing. It's more about like putting yourself in their shoes and trying to figure out what's the best right thing for them to do next.
Absolutely.
No. Well, kind of going back to where we started, where you're talking about kind of the focus that you've had when you're building this agency, wanting to be taking care of your team first, then clients, and so on from there. Um, I know you have some pretty strong beliefs around kind of agency culture and transparency and things like that. Can you unpack that a little bit and kind of how you see it fitting into um, maybe just like, I don't know, your beliefs about the best way to run and grow an agency?
Yeah, absolutely. So I kind of started in business a little bit different than I think a lot of people have, where they go to school or college or whatever that looks like for them, and then they go to work for somebody else, do that for a little while, and then go out of their own. Um, I had through college, starting at about age 11 all the way to 21. I had about 18 different jobs, and I will say that that may make me sound like I'm not employable, because I changed jobs so many times. A lot of times I was doing multiple jobs at the same time, working different places. Everything from food service to I worked in two different offices at the university when I was there, to all kinds of different things. I got to see a lot of different management styles. I got to see a lot of different organizations, and how they worked, how they took care of their people, or I mean, in some cases, not going to throw anybody under the bus, didn't do quite as well at taking care of their people.
Mhm.
And that really kind of shaped my mindset around what a company could look like. I had an opportunity literally right out of school to start a nonprofit. I did that starting in 2006. Um, Founded a nonprofit, really kind of got it up off the ground. I continued to lead it for the next 16 years. Recently, about 2 years ago, transitioned out of that role. But I'd already had some history in starting an organization. The opportunity to create Ingenius came along in early 2008. And so I didn't have professional work experience at that point. I mean, I was in a startup and then starting another startup all at the same time.
Yeah.
I didn't have a lot of examples of how things are supposed to work, quote unquote, in other places. And so I kind of had to create what does our work culture look like a bit from scratch. And just kind of taking what I was hearing from other people. My co-founder, who was with the company for the first number of years at Engenius, he also was starting this straight out of school. He didn't have a whole lot of professional work experience of a big company to shape what this looked like. And so we really tried to look at everything through the lens of what creates a healthy work-life balance, what creates healthy people, and to some extent, in a very selfish way, what do we want to work in and day
Mhm.
out?
Yeah.
And so as we went through the first number of years, the kind of the formative years of the company, we saw other agencies that were working at all hours of the day. I mean, they were taking calls from clients on, late Sunday night or, during the middle of a kid's football game or something like that. And, we saw that and we just said, I don't think that's what we want. I mean, we didn't have kids yet, but that's not what we wanted to experience. Um, and so when we saw things like that, we started making some notes on like, what do we really want this to look like? And we said, hey, we're going to have a 40-hour work week. Even for our leadership, we're going to strive towards 40 hours and then you're done. But how can we create an agency like that when there are other agencies having to bill 50, 55, 60 hours per person just to be able to be competitive on, compensation and benefits and everything else and be profitable? And so we had to make some hard decisions there, but we really did all of those through the lens of how do we make this a really great place for people to work where they can also, more so than work, have a great life outside of work. They can have opportunities to do things on their own, to coach their kids' t-ball team, to really have some positive experiences that aren't completely revolving around work life. They can have home life, whatever that looks like for them. And
Right.
that really became our focus, our drive. And I mean, that continues today. We do whatever we can to be flexible with employees. We still have to get the job done, and that's important. We still have clients that need things, but we want to have that flexibility, and not just flexibility, but also kind of a requirement that we need you to take time for yourself. I
Mhm.
remember we rewrote our vacation policy. Um, gosh, I think it's been 10 years now. And at first our team kind of looked at it and said, this is a lot of rules. Like you're making us do some things. And I said, yeah, that's intentional. I want to make you use your vacation time. Uh, and they kind of thought about it and they're like, well, I mean, I guess we probably should use it. I'm like, yes, I want you to use it. Like, I mean, I want you to get out of the office and not just if you've been around for 3 years, but even for a first year team member, I think it's even more important. You're going through drinking out of a fire hose, kind of learning everything, learning the ropes, getting used to our process and everything else. You need to have some time outside of the office. Take a vacation, go visit family, go. I mean, if a vacation to you is sitting at home and drinking coffee on a crisp fall morning out on your back porch, like go for it. I don't care what you do.
Yeah.
Don't do work.
Yeah. Don't be there just like waiting for emails to respond to or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've definitely been in agencies where that was more of the culture, which was a big bummer.
Yeah.
So, well, do you have any tips or advice that you'd give to other agencies that maybe want to move more in that direction? But, I guess what are some of the things that you guys had to do and maybe learn about yourselves in order to push things in that direction?
Yeah. I think first and foremost, we really had to envision what we wanted the company to look like from a culture standpoint, what we wanted out of a job. Because I've been very open with people for a long time now. I'm not old, relatively speaking. I don't plan on stopping work anytime in the near future. I want to do this for a long time. And so I want to create something that I really enjoy working in alongside the other people that are working in it as well. And so that's really pushed me to really ask myself, what is a healthy work-life balance? What does that look like for me? How do I make sure that I'm setting an example for other people? And so you have to define what that looks like for you. And that may differ based on what part of the country you're in. It may differ based on what industry you're in. There are some
Mhm.
industries where you have to have an ability to have somebody on call on the weekends, depending on your client base. If you've got large e-commerce clients that if something stops working at 3 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon, they're going to lose 500,000 in sales over the weekend. You got to jump in there and fix it for them.
Mhm.
So it's going to look different than our agency, where it's fairly rare. We have after hours weekend requests for stuff.
Mhm.
Things are just a little bit less, you know, less pressing, I guess you would say. And
Yeah.
so you got to figure out what that looks like for the type of agency you are for your client base. I think the other thing that you have to figure out, and this has been hugely helpful for us, is what are our values as an agency? What are the things that really set us apart, that really make our culture? I don't want to say one in a million, because I'm sure there are other agencies and even other companies that have similar cultures. But what really does make us a little bit different? What makes an employee feel really at home versus feeling like they're in some kind of foreign place? Um, and so that's that's really what we had to dig down and do when we first identified our core values. And I use bunny ears around it because that's kind of what it felt like at the time. We came up with 17, um, and then we spent some time with them. We looked at them really hard, and we realized, oh, we're missing two. And so we had 19 core values. And we rolled those out to the full team. It was really exciting. And yeah, they kind of looked at us like we were crazy. And then somebody finally had the guts to ask us a few days later, are they really core if you have to have 19 of them?
Good
And
question.
so we kind of looked in the mirror and we said, yeah, I don't know that any of us are going to memorize these. So we took some of those, and I mean, there were some things that we just believed were foundational to any business, and so we actually made those into what we call our principles of good business. They're
Mm,
they're not things that we feel like really make us unique. They're things that we care a lot about, like having great services. Whatever the services are that we're providing to clients at any given point in time, as marketing evolves, they've got to be great. That's our clients deserve it. We should expect it of ourselves, but that's not unique to Engenius. That should be what every company is trying to do if they're providing services to their customers. And so
mhm.
we kind of set those aside, and then we really looked at what does make us a little bit different. And we found five that really summed up who we are, and what we're all about. And we hire based on those principles. We evaluate new employees based on those. We evaluate existing employees based on those. And for some employees, we've had to separate because there just wasn't a good values fit. We didn't value the same thing, and that created a lot of tension for everybody involved. And
Mhm.
so, I don't want to say that this leads to hiring a bunch of people who think the same and act the same and things like that. It really doesn't. It's just what are some of the most important things that we hold in common? What are some of the things that we can tell a new applicant that's looking to come to work with us? Hey, this is kind of the culture that we have here. This is what we're all about. And so, if you abhor having fun in the workplace, you're probably not going to do well here, because be fun is one of our core values, and we like to have fun in what we do. Even though what we do is serious, we're marketing professional businesses to professional people. We like to have fun along the way. That's just a core of who we are. And so, if you get annoyed by, people around you having fun every once in a while, probably not a healthy place for you to be. Um, find a place that isn't fun and go to work there. Um, but that's really, I think, helped us have an organization where, as we're hiring people, we can be very upfront about who we are,
Mhm.
and evaluate whether or not somebody's going to be a good fit or not. And likewise, for their purposes, they can evaluate if they think they're going to be a good fit. And so I think that's really helped us as a company surround ourselves with really really good people that do come from very diverse backgrounds and have different ways of thinking and ways of going about stuff, but helping us work on the same level. And that's something, if I was leading a company and trying to think through, okay, things just feel stuck. Things are, I'm not really sure what's wrong. That's one of the first places that I would look. Is what are the things you value? What are the things that are most important to you? What is the thing that you're really trying to create here? And to some extent, we had to kind of mesh those core values with what our working philosophy was. We want to work 40-hour weeks. Well, that requires a level of vulnerability to ask for help. It requires our team members to say, hey, we're going to put a cap on how much we're going to do something here, and we're going to be very open about it. We're going to tell clients, if, hey, this is a next week task. This is not something we're going to get done this week. As much as they may want to hear this week, we know that's not real. And so we've got to be a little bit, not just a little bit, we've got to be very honest with them, but we've got to be honest in a vulnerable way. Um,
Yeah.
that's not easy, but it creates better client relationships.
Yeah. Does kind of this focus on culture and these core values, does that impact who you say yes and no to as far as new clients as well? Because I could see there being, you having to say no to people who it's just like, I don't think this is going to work out long term with our culture.
Oh yeah, yeah. There are a number of different types of organizations that we just don't work well with. If and some of them we actually figured out how to work well with because they've said, hey, yeah, we want to work with you guys. We respect what you do. You do really good work. We know that you're not going to have the same mo that we have, but we're going to make it jive. We've had clients that have tried to call our employees' personal cell phone numbers, on the weekends and stuff. With, hey, how's it going with my project? Not a, oh my gosh, I went to update something and I deleted my homepage, which did happen once. Or more than once. It's scary when you give clients the keys to the website. Sometimes they can do some crazy stuff. It was just a, hey, I need a project update. Well,
Hmm.
dude, it's lunchtime on Saturday. I'm watching college football. I'm gonna get back to you on Monday. And so I think the biggest question that we've had to ask ourselves is, can a client adapt to the way that we work?
Hmm.
And that may mean that they are similar in the way that they work. It may mean that they're different, but they have to essentially give us license to be who we are.
Hmm.
And that's something that's really, really important for us. We've had to be very clear with clients that we're not perfect. If you want a perfect agency, please go somewhere else. But we're humans. We will make mistakes. I can promise you one thing: if we do make a mistake, we're going to work our tails off to fix it and get it back to a good spot. But we're not perfect. We're going to have times where you give us an idea, we come back with a visual representation of that, and it is very far from what was in your head. That's okay. Let's figure out how we get to a better spot with it. Tell us your feedback on it.
Hmm.
That's part of being it's part of being in business, but it's also especially part of the creative industry. We've got to we're working with stuff that we can build the best website in the world, and 5 seconds after we launch parts of it are obsolete. It's we have a saying at work that the internet is a living and breathing thing, and I know technically it's not, but it feels a whole lot like it is. It's very
Yeah.
much alive, and it does its thing, and we've got to roll along with it. And so, yeah, I mean that's just one example, but there are a number of different kind of client fits that we've just found over time. It's just not a good it's not a good fit for us. We've had a lot of challenges working, with certain types of industries and things like that. And so for those, what we'll do if they call in is we'll try to figure out, hey, are what are you really looking for, and help them explore that a little bit. And once they've identified what they're looking for, how do we move things on to somewhere that would be a good fit for you? Do we have any colleagues? Do we have anybody in the network of 100 different agencies that we know out there around the world that would be a good fit to work with this client? Can we introduce them to someone who can be helpful? And that's really the pathway we take with that, which honestly I think makes us feel a little bit better about it, because it's not just telling somebody no. It's telling them, hey, we may not be a good fit for this because of X, Y, or Z. We're going to help you get in touch with the right people.
Yeah.
The one group that we don't refer out is, I have a pretty low tolerance for we this is going to go really dark really fast. Verbally abusive clients. There's some clients that they like to yell at people, and I don't know if they do that in their business as well. If they do, I have my personal feelings about that, but that's how they do their business. Um, I just don't have a high tolerance for anybody yelling at our employees, using any kind of insulting language. And so that's not to say we don't cuss. We drop a few f-bombs around the office from time to time, but it's really, we got to respect each other. And if people don't have the respect of our team, that's not going to be a good fit for us to work together, because I'm not willing for our team members to have to go through that. And so if somebody's having a bad day, we'll work to try to figure out how can we get things on a good spot. But clients who repeatedly take advantage of employees, or are derogatory to them consistently, that's just not a good fit for us. And honestly, I don't know any agency that it is. So that's the one group that I've had to just be very, very staunch about. Hey, if this happens, we're going to have to find a way to offboard this client, um, because I want this to be a great place for our people to work, and you can't do that when your integrity is getting questioned, and you're feeling like this other person is just hanging out to dry every day. That's not fair to anybody.
Yeah. Well, you're going to have better employee retention if your team feels like their leadership has their back. When, if there is an abusive client where it's like, you know what, if I have to get rid of one of these things, it's not going to be my team member. It's going to be the client. Yeah, that's very true. Very important. Well, thinking to the future,
Mhm.
like what do you see Ingenious in the future? Like, what are your long-term goals? And like, I guess, how do you think about reaching those goals?
Yeah. So I think we've always had this goal of getting a little bit bigger than we are right now, but it's not driven by a bigger is better kind of philosophy. It's really kind of taking an assessment of the situation we have at hand, and we've got a lot of employees who are single-handedly responsible for certain things where there's not really a natural backup. I mean, that's not to say we don't try to support our teammates, because we try to fill in as best we can. But when you get asked, "Hey, this employee's going to be on vacation for a week. Can you, maintain this other thing for a week while they're gone?" And that's not your skill set. It's pretty challenging. And so one of the things that I've been preaching to our team for a little while is just this desire to have duplication of roles, to be able to have a situation where we've got multiple people doing any given task. That just takes so much stress off everybody. Certainly, it helps the business from a succession planning standpoint, because if you've got critical functions that only one person does, that person decides that they need to go somewhere else, or they win the lottery, or whatever happens. You're missing that piece suddenly, and that can be catastrophic for many agencies. But really, I think there's this ability, and I've always framed it this way, that if we started something where we wanted to tell employees, hey, every few years, I want you to take a 2-week vacation or a month-long vacation or whatever that might be. I want us to be at a point where the agency isn't so stressed out because that key person is going to be gone for a period of time, that things stop functioning. If you have duplication of roles, you have somebody else that does that thing. And
Mhm.
so that's really kind of why we're looking to grow and expand. Certainly, one of the things that's kind of thrown a little bit of a, I won't say a wrench, but it's just an evolution of our industry. We're finding right now more and more, and this is something we've been seeing more commonly, really, in the years as we've kind of come out of the pandemic, that this landscape in marketing is doing what everybody said it was going to do 10 years ago. Where 10 years ago there were marketing agencies and there were digital marketing agencies, or web shops, or whatever you want to call them. There are people that just did digital stuff. There's this other group that did the branding, the print ads, the radio, the billboards, all that kind of stuff. Um, those two are really merging. I think we're seeing less and less distinction between what a digital marketing agency is doing and what a traditional agency did, in part because so much of small businesses and any businesses marketing is becoming digital. And
Mm.
so if they only need a little bit of graphic design, to put together a brochure to be able to hand out at a trade show or something like that, they don't need a full service marketing agency on retainer to be able to do that for them. They're doing a lot of digital stuff. That's just kind of an add-on. And so we're kind of seeing that as really where our agency is being called to be and needs to be in the future for to really serve our clients well. Is we essentially start to become more or less a one-stop shop for our clients. Digital may still be the majority of what they're doing, but they've got needs outside of that. And so we want to make sure we can connect them with those things. We're finding that a lot of companies used to have kind of, well, I got a guy for this, or I got a gal for this thing over here. And it's like, no, I just need one person, because we've had budget cuts, we're down marketing staff. I don't I don't have time to go vet people. I need to be able to call you and say, hey, we've never done a trade show before. We need a trade booth, and we need it next month. What do I do?
Yeah.
And we can say, hey, yeah, we've got a partner based on who you are and what you do and everything else. I think this is going to be a really good fit. let's get on a call 2 days from now and talk about what that looks like. They're not having to go search for that. They're not having to go vet for that. We can work with the other vendor to get them the right kind of brand specs and other things they need for that. They need that trusted partner from a marketing standpoint, and that's really what we're seeing clients need. But again, that's different for us because we're used to websites, SEO, digital ads, social media consulting, things like that. We're having to expand what we can advise on and really what we have resources connected to us to be able to go do. And so that's really where I see the future of our agencies. And to be honest, unless you're super specialized in a certain type of digital marketing, I think we're going to see more and more of that among digital marketing shops in general. Is this focus more on, hey, so much of our stuff is digital now that we're now the point people. Companies don't have this separate marketing agency that's doing the traditional stuff. That's just less and less needed by most companies. And so we become the go-to. Companies, I was listening to a study that was done late last year among buyers of things from agencies, and agencies are becoming, or companies are becoming more and more comfortable and really wanting to have that one call, that trusted partner that they can pick up the phone and call, even if it's not that agency doing it. They want that person they can call that's got their dream team of people that they can pull in for whatever that client might need. And that's really where our clients are going. And so that's kind of pushing us to do the same thing.
Yeah. Either be the person who can deliver the services or know somebody who can deliver those services to like a particular level of quality so that they don't have to just be trying to hunt down different vendors or service providers for the varying needs that they have.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. Well, Chris, has this been super helpful, and I really appreciate kind of how you're speaking to a lot of I think something that's very needed in the agency world. I think a lot of agencies, or at least I think there's a lot of agencies that are trying to do similar sort of thing to you. Like the values really matter to them, and they're trying to do something a little bit different. But I know that agencies in general have a reputation for really kind of just burning out their staff, and being always on and things like that. And so I think your approach, your point of view is a much needed sort of response to that sort of climate that can exist. So I appreciate you coming on. And
Absolutely.
if for people who want to follow up with you, get to know you more, learn more about Engenius, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
Yeah. So best way to learn more about Engenius is go to engeniusweb.com, and it's ENGENIUSWEB.com. And then if you want to reach out to me, you can find me on LinkedIn or just shoot me an email, Chris, CHRIS @engeniusweb.com.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for coming on the show, and looking forward to staying in touch.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.